move on to a new chapter. The next chapter is a big chapter. It's called PEST factors. It stands for political, economic, social, and technological factors which affect businesses. I'm going to split it into at least 4 lessons, probably more, at least one for each of those strands. And we're going to start with social factors. It's not necessarily, the first one mentioned in the chapter notes. It starts on page 11 and goes to page 13 of the chapter notes. The reason I'm starting with this one, I think it's the easiest to get your head around, and it's one of the shorter ones as well, so it's a nice way to build into it. The reason that they don't start with social factors is because PEST is a nice, easy, pronounceable word, and it would be pretty difficult to pronounce those letters in a completely different order. So that's why we're starting with social factors. That's why the notes don't start with social factors, and where to find the reading for this. Okay, so it's just a couple of pages of reading, and I'll talk about the topic in general. And all you've got to do today is make some notes. There's not going to be any sort of questions or exercise attached to this. Okay, so let's begin. Right, so there's lots of different data out there. So, for instance, this from the Office for National Statistics has got sort of employment and labour market, so people employed and not employed, stuff about the economy, business, industry, and trade. But this here is a lot of useful information. So, crime and justice, so how many sort of criminals, ex-criminals there are. Cultural identity, so that's people's faith, background, beliefs. Their education, so the level of education, how many people sort of vote and not vote, health and social care information, household characteristics, so how big your house is, how many people are living there, that sort of thing, the sort of houses you live in, leisure and tourism, all this stuff here, population and migration, so sort of what countries people come from if they're not from here, and how many of them are there. And that, along with finance, this is all affecting business. Okay, if you personally have certain beliefs and identity and sort of shopping habits and leisure and tourism preferences, you can't just assume that the entire country has got the same as you, because if they did, then it would be very easy to start a business, and sort of your market base would be everyone in the country, and you know exactly what it is because that's your beliefs. But if you want to start a successful business, you have to look at all this different social information to figure out what your business needs to be, who it needs to cater for, what your target market is, how big it is. Okay, so all of this information is really useful. If you go to the page for Office of National Statistics, you can click on some of these links and you can see a lot more information about it to see what I mean. Okay, so there's that resource. There's also a website called Migration Watch UK, which has got, so this graph shows foreign-born population in the UK by place of birth 2017. So this is just the foreign-born people. So obviously, if you add these up, 5 and a bit million, 1 and a bit, 1 and a bit, none and a bit, this is making up perhaps a fifth of the population. So about 20% of the British population, which is a lot. Okay, maybe a little bit less than 20%, but you can see that there's a lot of foreign-born people. And if you're starting a business, perhaps you want to cater for one of these subsets. Perhaps you want to cater for a specific country or a specific area, so Western Europe or Eastern Europe, Romania and Bulgaria, or the non-EU parts of the world. And this website's got more details. Here's another graph that they've got. So this is just the trend for Polish-born people. So you can see that it's increasing. It's trending upwards. It's a growing market. If you sell products which are appealing to people who are Polish born, so perhaps Polish foods, drinks, products, books in Polish, films with Polish subtitles, all these different sorts of things which might attract them, sort of phone contracts which will get cheap calls back to Poland, that sort of thing. All these different things which could be a useful product for a Polish-born person. As you can see, that market is growing. It might be a good idea to do that. So again, this is another example of how sort of all this data, all this social information can affect sort of your business or what your business should be. You can look at the UK as a whole. So there's another website here which has got, so it's got the population as a whole. You can see it over here growing. This is current time. This is current population, about 67.5 million. And you can see this is a projected trend. So you can see that the population is increasing, but it's slowing down a bit. You can see here a breakdown of the different age groups and genders. Okay, so it's a pretty even gender split. You can see that there's a lot of people in the 50 to 54 range, the 30 to 34 range. So if you want to reach a wide market, a wide audience, then perhaps that's what your product should be aimed at. You can still see that there's quite a lot of people in the very young age range. So perhaps you want to start selling some baby or toddler products. And all this information, all these sort of social factors are going to help you plan your business. The subtitle of Unit 4 is Business in a Changing World. So it's all about not only the fact that the world changes, but the fact that rather than just having a business in your local town, branching out, perhaps moving to different countries and that sort of thing. And so you might have a successful product and business in Britain, and you might want to find similar sorts of markets to work to branch out into. So you've got to have a look at the sort of the demographic breakdown, because a product for the United Kingdom might not necessarily work well in a different market. So you've got to, there's lots of other things you've got to look at, but you've got to potentially look at if your product is aimed at sort of people in the 50s age range, because that's when people have got disposable income, that's where lots of people, lots of percentages of the population are. You've got to check that there's a decent enough market size to make it worth your while moving into another country. So let's have a look at a few other countries and sort of their demographics and see how things can be different. So I've got a select few here. So China. So you can see, first of all, the graph, the population graph, seems to be going down. It's still going up. The population is still going up. It's still going to projected to go up for a while, but then it's projected to go down again. And you can also see that some strange little indents in the skyscrapers here, or the pyramids. 40 to 44, 35 to 39. This is when China had the one-child policy. So that's when it was restricting how many children you could have. And so in that sort of 10-year period, when people had fewer children, there are obviously fewer of them making up as a percentage of the population. And you can see that these parts of the graph are wider than the ones at the bottom. If you compare that to the British one, everything's either sort of marginally wider, but there's not a huge amount of gap. There's a lot of young people, a lot of young adults, there's a lot of middle-aged adults, and it goes very sort of consistently like that. But if you look at the China one, it's sort of, it's ducking in and out, and so there's different sort of different age groups perhaps you're going to target your product at. So look at another country. So India, you can see it's more of a traditional pyramid shape. You can see that the population is going to keep increasing for a while, so perhaps that could come into your business plans if it's a sort of longer term business plan that requires lots of people and lots of customers. You can also see that they haven't sort of implemented the same thing. They still seem to be growing. Now you can see it's slowing down here because there are slightly fewer very young children. So I think as countries just get a little bit more developed, then sort of the birth rates go down slightly, and so this is how a country can be different again. If you look at Somalia, sort of a country which is still developing, you can see how young the population is. You can see here how the population is going to carry on increasing for a long time and sort of increase at an increasing rate. You can see that very few people, so you start getting into the 0 point somethings when you get to the age of 60. Life expectancy is not as great there. So if you were getting a product for Somalia, aiming at a younger generations would be sort of you'd have a wider customer base, but you should look into the economic factors and things as well, because perhaps they haven't got the money for your product unless it's essential. So there's all these different things to think about. The reason for this is if healthcare is not that great, then people don't live to a particularly long age. If education's not that great, then that generally correlates to people having lots of children. People have lots of children because if you have 5 or 6 children in Somalia, perhaps only 1 or 2 make it to adulthood because of the healthcare situation. And so for that reason, there's lots of very young people, and it's a very sort of wide bottom pyramid there with not so many people at the top. So that's how another country, and how it's built up. If we look at Japan, now Japan is an extremely developed country. It's developed to the point where healthcare is really good. So you can see that there's still lots of people up in the 80s and beyond. 1% of the population is women in the 90 plus range, which is quite a lot. That means one in 100 people is a woman aged greater than 90 in Japan. So that's, you're going to find one on every street. And you can see that the birth rate is very small. The more developed a country is, the more people choose to have children later in life and choose to have fewer children as they sort of focus on career and education and self. And that sort of obviously has its characteristics that it can lead into businesses with. So you know that this is sort of a very developed country, technologically advanced. You're going to be catering for sort of the middle-aged to older person if you're going to launch a product here. You can see how the population is going to go very low if it carries on. It's not true, okay? You might look and think that this is going close to 0, but it's not. It's going to level off at some point. It's still finding that point. It's going to level off to people are having fewer and fewer children, but it doesn't mean it's going to carry on and people have 0 children. If we have a look at one more, so Saudi Arabia. So in this country, you can see how it's a lot wider on the male side, because in a Muslim culture, males are they've got a higher status than females, which means that you are going to find that some people choose not to carry on with the pregnancy if it's a female child. Or you might find that if some people have a female child, they'll have another one to try to get a male heir. And if they have a male the first time, they might just stop having children. So for all those reasons, there are a lot more males in the population, which is sort of a useful piece of information to know if you wanted to launch a business there. You would have to know to make it sort of male-centric. And also with somewhere like Saudi Arabia, all the different cultural aspects, you'd have to know that when it comes to sort of launching your product. So all the different social and cultural aspects are really important when it comes to this sort of thing. Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to show you a few pictures. One's always going to say then, one's always going to say now. It's meant to indicate something. And what I want you to do is to have a think about what do you think I'm trying to get at with these pictures? What change has there been, which is going to affect business choices and the way businesses are run and the sort of products they're going to. And I'll go through all the pictures first, and then I'll come back and I'll give some answers. So you might want to pause it on each picture. I'll go through it, sort of write down what do you think I'm getting at, and then I'll go through all the answers at the end. So this is the first one. So pause it now if you want to have a go at saying what you think I'm getting at and how it's affected business. Okay, and the next one. 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 And I think that's the final one. Let's just check. No, one more. Okay, so we'll go back to the first one and I'll talk you through what I was getting at when I found these pictures, what sort of point I was trying to make. So this one, I was trying to indicate that if you look at this picture, there's a lot of young people. And if you look at this picture, there's a lot of older people. The population is aging as healthcare improves, as people choose to have fewer children. A greater proportion of the population is elderly. And that means that your business might want to cater for that growing market. Okay, if a market is large but has always been large, then there'll be enough demand in place. But if a market is growing, then it is going to require increased supplies, and so you can meet that demand with your business. So because there is a ever increasing proportion of older people, it would be a good market to enter to try to aim a product at. Okay, and this one I was getting at in this picture here. If you look at every single face, every single person is white. Okay, and now the world is much more multicultural. Okay, there's different ethnicities, there's different places people have migrated from. Each of those people come with their own identities, preferences, wants, needs. And so if that market is increasing, then it is going to need an increased sort of supply of products for them. And so that would be a good market to enter. Okay, this one. So over the years, sort of women have got more and more sort of towards equal rights in working places. It used to be the woman was the housekeeper, and now the woman is working practically the same as the man. And so you're going to find a lot more products. Perhaps you have formal wear for women, business wear, office wear for women, and that would be a good product. Perhaps it means that if everybody's working, then there's a need for ready meals or lots of different things to sort of make life more convenient for people who are working. If someone is not at home doing everything themselves from scratch, then perhaps a product or service would sort of be useful for that. So if you think about this, how it means that sort of you're going to need more products for women in the workplace, more products to make fewer people being housekeepers and housewives. All those different products are growing markets, and so you'd be sort of wise to enter one of those. Okay, this one. So it's what I'm trying to get at here is people's preferences with food and leisure. You're getting fewer and fewer people are going to the pub for their leisure, and fewer people are smoking, more people are health conscious, and you can see she's wearing sort of sportswear there and also eating a salad. So sort of health and fitness is on the rise. It's a growing market, and that would be a good market to get in. And marketing for sort of these sorts of people is going to be less and less profitable as that market is shrinking. Okay, next one. So people's preferences for luxury items like this have increased. So coffee used to be just a drink to give you some sort of caffeine, keep you awake. Now it's a sort of a luxury item which you can spend a lot of money on, and it can come with all the different trimmings, and it can be very sort of enjoyable for people. So if more and more people are having coffee like this rather than like this, then it's a growing market, and perhaps that would be a good market to enter. So people's leisure activities are evolving. It used to be you would go to the cinema, you'd sit down, you'd watch a film on a big screen, have some popcorn, and then go home. And if you didn't go to the cinema, then you'd be waiting perhaps a year for it to come out on VHS, and then another year for it to be on the TV. And as far as other leisure options, there were fewer of them about. Now, the leisure industry has got more competition as there's more things people can do. VOD, streaming, and sort of being able to have a much quicker turnaround from things being in the cinema, being available in the home, means that they have got to market themselves differently. They've got to make it worth you coming to the cinema. So 3D, vibrating seats, sense around, very sort of powerful sound systems, all these different things, turning the cinema from just showing you a film into a more of an experience. As markets change, even if you are sort of existing in this market, you're going to have to it's going to affect your business. You're going to have to adapt if you want to survive. So that's another way how things are changing, social trends. So people being environmentally conscious, and also different sort of legislation coming in place about pollution, different taxes. It might be sort of a better market to get into for sort of electric and hybrid cars and that sort of thing, rather than the traditional cars. For a number of reasons, there's an increasing market of people who want this. There's an increasing ability for us to have this. So different charging stations are becoming more and more prevalent. It's becoming easier for people to have them. And with different sort of taxes and charges for petrol and carbon emissions and congestion charges, it's going to actually be sort of perhaps more economical to get in this market as well. And last one we're looking at is this is how people used to work. Office cubicles, you'd have your little area you do your work in. and you go to work, you do your work, you go home. And now things are trying to be a little bit of a nicer working environment to make your working day more pleasurable and make you more motivated and more productive. Okay, and especially if you're in a creative field, being motivated is going to be a huge boost to your productive output. So this hasn't sort of affected sort of what market you could be in, but it's affected the way we do business, because if you adapt your business like this, you could get more productivity out of your workers, and that could be an increase in profits and market share. Okay, so that's it for today. Hopefully everything made sense. If it didn't, or you want something further explained, just message me. And apart from that, I will speak to you next week.